Hello, everybody. This is Tina Catola and Sarah Kotz, and we are talking about the 3 stages of Sagittarius. Now, probably there's a certain number of people listening to this or watching this who've never heard of any 3 stages of anything, of particular signs, but that's the basic foundation of 3rd stage astrology, is the understanding that we stay the same sign for many lifetimes, and we go through 3 stages of development with that sign. And each stage lasts for several lifetimes. So it's a very long-term, very deep process. There's a tremendous amount that's learned and developed as people go through these stages. And each stage is a completely different personality type from all of the other stages. So in my book, I use the imagery of a caterpillar and a cocoon and a butterfly to represent the 3 stages in any sign. And each sign has a particular purpose that the person expresses in their own unique way, because it's a very interesting situation, because there's certain archetypes and certain similar types of experiences people have, but everybody goes down this path in their own individual way. And 3rd stage astrology helps to illuminate that, so you're not stuck in a mold, but you're really understanding what drives you, what troubles you, and how to go forward and unravel the things that are challenging. So actually, Sagittarius is a super interesting sign because it's the rarest sign. And it's dramatically rarer than all the rest of the signs in terms of birth rates. So if you had a little bar graph of all 12 signs, you would see that the birth rates of all the signs up until you get to Sagittarius are almost the same number of people born in that sign. And then by the time we get to Sagittarius, the 9th sign, the bar graph goes down. And then the last 3 signs, the bar graphs are at the same level as all the other signs. So to me, that's quite interesting. And the purpose of Sagittarius is to seek truth, to find the real truth of reality, to share that truth. So, you know, my cynical mind thinks, well, most people aren't really interested in the truth. So that's why it's a less popular sign to be born under. And in the Northern Hemisphere, another potential explanation or a way in which things coincide is that from a humorous vantage point, March is not a very sexy month. So there's less people getting conceived in March to be born in December or late November for Sagittarius. But to me, that rarity of it also kind of expresses the preciousness of Sagittarius. It's really a sign that I tremendously admire, because there is this sincerity and this purity and this clean, open-hearted, truthful approach that Sagittarius people innately have. And it all, you know, there's different stages where any sign can basically become a real pain in the rear end because they're dealing with so much emotional garbage they don't know how to cope with, and some of them can really get difficult. And that's true for any sign. But at the core, there's this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful nature that people born with Sun in Sagittarius have. And so in 1st stage Sagittarius, the person's born with this, it's an embodiment of truth rather than consciously seeking the truth. And the truth that a 1st stage Sagittarian embodies is trust in life and trust in the divinity of all things, the divinity of life, without even really thinking about it. So what I describe a 1st stage Sagittarius as being is the happy little protected child of God. And because they just completely trust, and it's natural and instinctive, one of the phrases I use for Sagittarius is natural truth. They don't even have to think about it, but they trust. And my grandfather was a 1st stage Sagittarius, my paternal grandfather. And my grandmother outlived him by almost 30 years. And she used to always tell me that she felt so bad about how she treated him, because she would just lose her temper with him all the time, because no matter what kind of trouble they might be going through, whatever problems they faced, her husband would always say, it's all fine, it's all going to turn out great, it's going to be okay. And she said, well, he was right, he was always right. But then I felt alone when I was suffering and worrying. You know, it felt like he wasn't paying attention to me being all upset about this, and he wasn't taking life seriously. But it was actually, she realized it was actually his trust in life that carried them through all these difficult times. So that's a beautiful quality 1st stage Sagittarians have. Unfortunately, other people don't understand it, and other people get irritated by it. So poor first stage Sagittarians are the only people who really get criticized and attacked by people close to them over and over again throughout first stage. So it's great when you trust life and everything works out, but you don't know really what your magic power is, because it's a very innocent, you just kind of jumped into truth without knowing what it is. You're living inside of it, and there's no analysis of it in first stage. There's just simply trusting it and life turning out fine. But after a while, after a few lifetimes of things that work for you, but they don't work for other people, and you can't really help the other people. They're still struggling on, and it makes the Sagittarius person sad. And Sagittarius is not by nature a sad sign. I don't think anybody is by nature sad. You know, we only become sad because of a reason. But I think at the core, Sagittarius has this profound natural optimism. So by the end of first stage Sagittarius, the person is losing that a little bit for two reasons. One is it feels sad that you can't help anyone else, that other people are still struggling and suffering and you're not making a dent in it all. But also because so many people resent the first stage Sagittarians' happiness, and they resent that things work out so well for them. And what are you so happy about? What are you grinning about? Why aren't you being more responsible? Which is very strange, because Sagittarians are very responsible. But if they're smiling, they don't look like they're working hard. And so after enough criticisms and attacks, it really does create a wound the person carries with them until they really get fully into third stage. There's a tremendous sensitivity to criticism. And it hurts because over and over again, the people closest to you didn't understand you, and they hurt you unfairly. Because it's one thing to be criticized for something that you're actually doing, but it's a totally different situation if you're being criticized for what's kind of the best thing about you, and you're not hurting anybody, you're not meaning to cause anybody unhappiness. It's the last thing you want, actually, and they're still mad at you. Mm-hmm. And that's also hard on the self-esteem. So the self-esteem gets broken down by the criticism, and then this sense of not being able to help other people with their problems adds to that feeling of low self-esteem. Well, you know, maybe I'm not really worth very much. Maybe the people close to me are right and I'm no good. And I just feel sad that I can't do anything to help anybody. So there's a kind of collapse that happens at the end of first stage Sagittarius after 3 or 4 lifetimes of kind of living a charmed existence, but sort of being a little isolated in it. And the person moves into second stage. And so in second stage, there is a very rational, conscious, driven search for the truth, as though it's something found in the outside world, because it was in the inside world in first stage, but they took it for granted and didn't really have any conscious understanding of it. So they assume, okay, maybe I'm not good enough, but maybe I can find something that is. So there's a real sincerity. I want to find the answers that are going to really help the world. And because there's a sense of urgency behind it, because there were people you couldn't help for a long time, you're running away from being attacked and criticized, you want to feel better about yourself, it feels very urgent, and it feels like it's got to be something I find outside of myself. There's a tendency many times, and everybody walks a different path in second stage, but there's a tendency to get involved in more extreme philosophies. So second stage Sagittarians can get involved in very, very extreme religious philosophies, and of any kind, whether it could be an extreme Christian or a very extreme Buddhist, and taking on vows of celibacy. What are we going to get rid of? In a lot of cases in second stage Sagittarius, there's a tendency to say, well, we've got to find the good stuff and we got to get rid of the bad stuff. So the bad stuff is our sexual nature gets in the way. We have to go be celibate now, which is a real challenge for a Sagittarian because they're naturally very sexual in a positive way. Generally speaking, most of them are. So then they're saying, but no, I got to get rid of that. And so that's damaging. We have another level of damage. First level of damage was the criticism from others. Second level of damage is starting to alienate parts of yourself. Or they might go to a Zen Buddhist monastery and the mind is the enemy. We have to get rid of the mind, or we have to get rid of the ego, or we have to get rid of money because money is the root of all evil. If we live in a life of poverty, We're going to choose the right path that's going to benefit society. So there's all these things that are being taken to extremes. And sometimes a person comes up with their own philosophy. So it can be external politics, a particular political system that the person is convinced, because they want it to be true, that this ideology is going to be the answer to making everything better in the world. But again, it gets taken to extremes, and the person, by going to these various different philosophical or spiritual extremes, does damage to more parts of themselves. So we had that natural, innocent oneness and trust, and everything works out, but I don't know why, in first stage. In second stage, the person's taking themselves apart in order to make the world a better place. And sometimes taking the world apart in different ways in order to make the world a better place. Now, in the meantime, the personal relationships are difficult because that pattern of unconsciously expecting criticism from their nearest and dearest, often particularly parents. The dear client who has a terribly critical parent who they always go back to, who keeps beating them up. And it's the same pattern again, but even more so critical romantic partners. And even to the point where some Sagittarians are very prone to abusive relationships, male or female. They can draw abusive partners, whether it's emotional abuse or physical abuse. I'm thinking of a couple of famous women who are kind of known for that. They're Sagittarians, and I'm so bad with names. They're falling out of my brain at the moment. Yeah, so maybe I'll have to come back to that. But they both had to really pull themselves out of that kind of abusive situation, get their strength back as they were going through second, third stage. And I'm sure there's more than just those two as well. So sometimes too, by the time the person gets to the end of second stage, they've kind of given up trying to save the world. And so some late second stage Sagittarians just want to be important in some way. So there's a certain type of late second stage Sagittarian that just wants attention or accomplishment because it makes up for that feeling of low self-esteem. But it's always kind of empty and hollow because they really want people to be happy. And okay, maybe if I'm a celebrity, people are happy in the moment when I'm entertaining them, and that feels kind of nice. But it still doesn't solve those questions, those deeper questions that is at the core of what Sagittarius is looking for. So always by the time the person gets to the end of second stage in any sign, second stage is a compensation for the stresses that happened at the end of first stage. So I'm searching for the truth to compensate for the fact that people criticized me, to compensate for the fact that I couldn't help them. I'm going to find a way. But all this compensation, it just tangles things up more and more. So by the end of second stage, the person is collapsing, they're falling apart. They can fall apart physically. It's not uncommon for any sign for people to have health breakdowns at the end of second stage, although I wouldn't say that's a majority, but I'd say probably at least 30%. That's a component because you're literally exhausted on every level a lot of the time. So every sign actually, when it goes into second, third stage, looks for an answer, looks for the truth. And for Sagittarius, it's now I'm looking for the truth to help me, never mind anybody else. I got to get out of this horrible pain that I'm in. And so the person starts to go towards a healing path. Now, I forgot to mention that one of the things that can happen towards the end of second stage Sagittarius for some Sagittarians is that because they've had so many lifetimes of doing violence to parts of themselves, I'm going to get rid of my mind, I'm going to get rid of my sexuality, I'm going to get rid of this, rid of that. It starts to damage them on a psychological level, and they become very angry and frantic. So some late second stage Sagittarians are very emotionally reactive, great extremes. There's a strong tendency for jealousy to be a factor for Sagittarians in their intimate relationships. And this is because for lifetimes you weren't enough for your partner. Your partner always found fault with you. So there's this really big fear that they're going to run off with someone else. And so any hint that there's a rival, and the person just goes ballistic. Anger and rage issues can happen with certain Sagittarians at the end of second stage. Not everyone goes through this, but some will really have these huge sort of breakdowns, and extreme sorts of reactions and addictions can happen too at the end of second stage Sagittarius. They're kind of a wild child that's just in so much pain, and they're just bouncing off the walls. So going back into second, third stage, when a person is finally trying to get those answers, they start to begin to heal themselves and to be caring towards themselves and start understanding some of this trauma and where it all came from. And for most people, it's just in this lifetime, but there's plenty of footprints in this lifetime, because there's often that experience of having been criticized that the person has been re-encountering and maybe had it in their early childhood. There's also the importance of getting back to listening to your inner self. The second, third stage Sagittarian needs to get back a little bit of the first stage trust in life and the spontaneous ability to just be in the moment and be in their inner self and be in that inner being, because the truth is found within. This is what a Sagittarian learns as they get through second, third stage. There's a point where they find a wisdom inside of themselves, because in a way, all this searching for truth outside of themselves was a big waste of time in second stage. And in another way, it was incredibly valuable, because the person has usually gained a lot of strengths. I mean, they might have mastered business in order to save the world. They've got spiritual traditions. I've seen a lot of people with a martial arts background that you can tell stems back for lifetimes. They've got massive skill set that they've acquired in their subconscious tool chest, and they will come back to these things and they'll pick these abilities up really quickly. Maybe astrology might be something.
Hopefully.
Because Sarah's a Sagittarius. One of the things in the toolkit. And the knowledge comes back quickly. But whereas in second stage, the person tended to be very dogmatic in their application of these ideologies because there's a panic situation going on. In second, third stage, they're going back into the center of their being and trusting themselves. And so they can balance everything very beautifully. So it doesn't have to ever go to extremes. And you can tend to feel like, well, this particular thing I learned in my Buddhist lifetime would be really useful for Charlie. And this particular thing I learned when I was doing hardcore physical transformations to save the world and all my fitness knowledge, that's going to help Shelley. And so you're able to trust in your inner being, but now you can bring conscious truths out very spontaneously. So that's how, once a person has reached that point, then they have this trust in life and they let things work beautifully for them again, the same way they did in first stage. But now they have a knowledge toolkit and even a language to give people pieces of knowledge and tremendous unconditional support that's super helpful for people's lives. And there's a tremendous joy in all of that. And there's been the person's healed and released the karmic attachment to criticism. And it's a karmic attachment because anything that we have a strong emotional reaction to that we haven't found a way to resolve so that it's really, we're really at peace with it, and we've let go of all the emotion by experiencing the emotion and freeing ourselves from that emotion, it sticks to us. And so we will have these patterns that keep coming back and repeating. Everything was going great, and then I suddenly got hit by the Mack truck of somebody really attacking me and criticizing me again. Or I got into another relationship where I wasn't enough for that person, or they're criticizing me and dominating me. So it's these little tangled threads that second, third stage unravels. But by the time a person is in third stage Sagittarius, they have a really positive, harmonious partnership most of the time, unless they're at that point where, well, it's not a big feature for me. If their birth chart doesn't really highlight relationship in any way, they may not have a strong drive for it, so they're more concerned with what they're doing in the world. But in general, it's positive partnership, and it's giving out a wide array of your natural gifts and knowledge in a way that uplifts and helps the people. So that's where the person has sought truths, found the core of truth within, and can help other people reach that core of truth within as well, and you're able to give stuff to the world that really benefits the world. So that's the story of the 3 stages of Sagittarius. And do you have any comments, Sarah?
What happens like in the what is it called? First, third stage, like when they
Oh,
skip
right. Yes,
top of
thank
the
you.
saddle?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah. In every sign, there's what I call the crossroads, which is an opportunity that opens at the end of first stage for everybody, where they have an opportunity to avoid going through second stage and they can go straight to third stage. And a lot of people, and because it generally takes about 1 to 4 decades to make the transitions between the stages. And of course, that's a short period of time because each of the stages lasts for 3 or 4 lifetimes. So while a person's in that 1 to 4 decades, they're often considering the possibilities of going towards third stage, versus following that path of least resistance of reacting to the emotions of the moment and sliding down into second stage. So for Sagittarius, it's about a first, third stage Sagittarius is a person who decides, yes, the truth is necessary. I got to find the truth. And I'm going to hang on to this trust I have inside myself. And I'm going to hang on to some kind of quiet sense that the truth is within. And so a first, third stage Sagittarian doesn't have to go through all these extreme philosophies. They don't have to look outside of themselves, because that's, if there is an error, and again, life makes really good use of errors. We can gain a lot from our errors. But if there is an error in going into second stage, it's this error of believing the truth is outside of myself and I got to find it somewhere else. So that's what happens for first, third stage Sagittarius. The person says, well, wait a minute, everybody's criticizing me, but that's not my fault. And I know something, I don't know what it is, but I know that I know it, and I'm going to search inside myself for it. And it takes strength to do that, because every fiber of one's being is screaming, I got to get out of here, because they often do just run off. I'm going to run off and join the circus, and maybe they'll teach me everything I need to know. Or the gypsies, I'll run to the monastery, whatever it is, or this new political party. These are the things the person runs to go into second stage. But to not run away, but to go inside in the midst of all of this challenge, so that then they almost stop and say no, with a deep inner sense of truth to those who are attacking them for their natural state of being, instead of kind of running off to find an answer and make up for because in a way Sagittarians are almost kind of trying to say, I'm really sorry I upset you, I'll try to do better now, I'll find an answer. But the actual truth is, well, I'm really sorry you upset yourself over me, over what you made up in your head about me.
Yeah. Are those people that go from first to third instead of going through, or would you say they're more evolved, or they've had more time?
Most of the time, people in general who in any sign go from first stage to third stage tend to be older souls, tend to be more evolved. Yeah. Because it takes a certain inner understanding to come to that kind of conclusion, because it's just a more natural reaction to go off and find an answer somewhere else, because we're in these physical bodies which give us the constant illusion that things outside of ourselves have a lot of power in the situation or have a lot of power over us. Which is an illusion. But boy, is it a really powerful, convincing illusion.
That's interesting. It's still so interesting that it's one of the rarest signs.
It is.
Or is it the rarest sign?
It is the rarest sign. Yeah, it definitely is. It's a much, much rarer birth rate. And it might depend on the year. Some years there are more people come in. I remember when my older son was born, I was friends with the midwives in Toronto, and their home births were just not happening hardly at all then. But I told my midwife that the year after I had my son, next December, you're not going to even be home. You're going to have so many births, because I could see at that point in time, there were so many Sagittarians that were going to be born, and the aspects were showing these really developed, evolved souls coming in. And that year, I think there might have been a higher birth rate, and it was absolutely true. She wasn't home the entire month of December. She had so many births at that point.
No, I could see that. Yeah.
And I knew these would be home birth children because they'd have a start that was more natural and more in alignment so they could move faster with their purpose.
Mm-hmm. The criticism in the second, third stage, like, is it that Sagittarius, like, they continue to have criticism, it's just their reaction to that? Is that what it is?
Yeah, they continue to have it because they still have the subconscious attachment to it. And by attachment, I don't mean the Sagittarian themselves is attaching themselves to it, but it's more that it's attached to them still. It's still stuck to them. And it's stuck to them by the emotional reaction. Because the emotional reaction is, I know I don't deserve this, but why is this happening? And I can't get out of it. There's almost this feeling like it has the power over me and I can't get away from it.
Yeah, it has this feeling of like, one of the things around me is that I care a lot and I'm being criticized for that perception around that caring.
Exactly.
Hard. And so you go in a panic mode of, well, that would mean I'd have to fundamentally change who I am. Like, what do I do about this? Right. Yeah. And so it kind of sends you into a little bit of a tailspin.
Totally. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And it's very, very hurtful to be criticized by somebody whom you've given your heart to, basically. And poor Sagittarians, they basically just live life that way. I give my heart to life. Yeah. Such a sincerity. And yes, you care so much. And then you just get broadsided. It's such a shock.
So in third stage, you still have the criticism around you. It's just you're just kind of like, well, that has everything to do with you and nothing to do with me.
I mean, there's going to be a certain amount of criticism anybody's going to encounter in life. But in third stage, they don't get as much of it at all because there's not the repeated pattern in the subconscious. Anything that's still active on a subconscious level has a magnetism. So if there's a pain sitting in there, we might not feel it today or for the next few weeks, but the subconscious has still got it in there. So it's like a little tape running. And when that tape or that conveyor belt, like a conveyor belt at the supermarket, comes to the surface, boom, the critical event manifests. Because your subconscious attracts it. And that doesn't mean it's not the responsibility of the person doing it too, because it is. They've got a funky issue they have to sort out. But that's their responsibility, that's their stuff. But to heal the trauma of having been criticized, and trauma is an interesting thing because the definition of trauma really is when something is so overwhelming at the time that you actually don't feel all of the emotion around the experience because something goes numb. It's overload. It's not possible to feel all of the emotion around the experience. So some of it stores away instead of just crying your heart out in every conceivable possible way, your body shaking like a leaf, everything you need to do, if you need to throw up, whatever you need to do to feel everything you're feeling at that moment, but be your own loving support as it's happening. Yeah. Then there won't be trauma. And when there's a replay, the replay is actually the subconscious instinctive desire to heal the situation. Okay, we're going to take another run at this. Let's see if we can fix it this time. And unfortunately, in second stage, there's no capacity to fix it because there's no capacity to have the objective understanding about yourself. So it just keeps replaying and replaying. And in second stage, the person tenses and compensates and finds some other method of responding. But because you're in second, third stage, so when you've been criticized, you don't want to do that. You want to stay yourself because you have to be yourself. You have to go towards who you are and towards your higher destiny. You've got no choice now. You wouldn't want to step backwards anyway. Yeah, I think there's always this piece of like, it's not you, but at the same time, because you're caring, you also want that other person to not feel towards you how they feel. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. Kind of like a weird complex, like from a Sagittarius point of view, it's just a weird internal, I want you to feel good because I genuinely care, but I also know at the same time, there's not like, I know me. Yes. So yes. I know what my intent is, and that's, yeah, so it's kind of this interesting. Yeah. And that's another thing about second, third stage in any sign is we learn at a certain point to have a certain kind of objective understanding that people just can't learn everything right now.
Mm-hmm.
They will eventually understand the things they need to understand.
Mm-hmm.
In first stage, that is the reaction. When someone criticizes you, yes, you have your pain, but you care about what the other person is going through. And you are taking responsibility for their unhappiness a certain amount because you know it's triggered by you. You want them to be happy. So that's a hook.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have the capacity to objectively understand how evolution works. That you get as you head towards third stage, you get to a point where your higher being perceives, yes, this person is in this particular stage right now, and they're going to have to go through X, Y, and Z. And then at that point, they'll be able to heal this problem that they have.
Mm-hmm.
And should I be available then? Should they come to me then? Then I can help them then. But I can't help them right now because they're just not at that stage. Because we all want people to get there now. You know, and everyone in second, third stage, in the early part of second, third stage, because they're just discovering these incredible truths about life. They want everybody to know this stuff. Know this now. It's going to help you. It's going to make your life so much better. You won't be stuck in this pain anymore. But not everybody's ready to hear it right now.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah. And a third stage person instinctively knows that. That's embodied in them. So they just completely accept whatever stage a person is at. Whereas second stage and second, third stage people will butt heads all the time. And it's usually the second stage person coming along and butting their head into the second, third stage person. And the second, third stage person going, what? But for Sagittarius, it's an added pain because of the old trauma around being criticized.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. And to be able to emotionally feel, because an intellectual understanding, it just gives us a roadmap of where we want to get to. An intellectual understanding by itself doesn't do much else, but we have the intellectual understanding of a principle, and then we make it part of our feeling nature. So to get back to what a first, third stage Sagittarian needs to figure out is that you're upset and you're making your problem my problem in your own head. It's not my problem, it is your problem. And to get to that point and to know, because you're heading more towards third stage, that you're going to have amazing tools for anybody who needs help. So that, yes, that is their problem and it's not your problem. And should they want some of these resources, they're available for them. Then you don't have a pressure on yourself to help this person anymore, because you know if they want it, they come and get it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And then when there's not that subconscious a magnet for the unhappy people to get mad at you, then your life just feels so much calmer, and it's just such a sense of control without in any way being controlling. It's very lovely.
Yeah, that's nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't know if you have any other comments on.
No, I don't think so. Like I could see how I fit into the kind of late second, third stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the people that were listening right before we started this recording, I was kind of talking a little bit about, just kind of over time, just being criticized or feeling attacked sometimes. And there was this recent case where I felt taken off guard and attacked, and it was more just about me caring, but it was being misinterpreted, obviously, based on their own perception. I think that my reaction was, though, to say to this woman, I was actually a little surprised at my reaction, but I actually told her we're not going to be able to resolve this because we're not going to see eye to eye. And so maybe I am further along than I thought I was. I was self-critical after walking away, but I had actually said to her, we're not going to be able to resolve this, but we'll still maintain professional in nature. But my reaction was, I don't think we're going to agree. And before, in previous relationships, I would want to make that person, to our point earlier, make that person feel better, and take it on myself. I was upset that it happened, for sure. It definitely threw me off. But my reaction was to say to her, you know, we're going to agree to disagree. And so that's not something that has come out of my mouth necessarily in the past. I've always wanted to make things better, even if it actually wasn't better on a perception wise.
Yeah.
You know, so
that's really great. That's really great.
Yeah. So maybe that's progress too.
Oh, it's definitely progress. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you'll find that, you know, next time you get that kind of hurdle, you'll handle it even better. And then, you know, you know, when you get, we whittle these things down, whatever they might be. I mean, there's other issues that work the same way, and they just get weaker and weaker after a while, and they just kind of, you know, then they just kind of disintegrate.
Yeah, no,
it's great.
And they come few and far between now, right? Like, I think it's just more, and to your point, it's when you understand your sign and kind of, you know, it's going to continue to pop in there until I kind of completely solve for that. So it must be close to that, because my reaction was very different than it would have been in the past. So
yes. Yeah. So that's the 3 stages of Sagittarius.